First up is Piece by Piece, which is a documentary about Pharrell Williams, and it is told in the medium of Lego animation, and being very specific with that phrasing, because if you were to just see a poster for this, or maybe even the trailer and not have any context, this would look like just every other Lego movie. And I'm not saying that as a knock. It's a great animation style. I think it's really fun and amazing, and I love the kind of stop motion but also CG nature of it. Think Lego Batman, think the Lego movie. There are some other kind of Lego styles that we've seen, but it's very much Lego movie-esque, with their partnership, etc., etc. So if you were a little kid, a lot of this would probably go over your head because it is a documentary. It's a lot of sit-down interviews. Everybody is represented as a Lego minifig, which is actually very creative. And I think because of the way Pharrell thinks and works and all that stuff, it just enables them to be more creative with the visualization of it and reenactments and all that stuff. So I think it was a very smart choice. I learned a lot about Pharrell from this. I was not aware of the impact he and the Neptunes had on most of the beats that, we hear in popular music and the variety of artists they work with. People from all branches of music participate in this, which is really impressive. And I think if you are a music fan, you will learn a ton about this. If you already knew a lot about Pharrell, I don't know if there's going to be a ton new. The one thing I don't know if it's warn you about, aside from the fact that this is not a plot-based Lego movie, so maybe if you have younger kids, this is not what it looks like, and that's not to say that you can't bring them to this, but the attention span thing might not work out so well for them. The other thing that was, in the beginning of it is very experimental in the beginning, and then it becomes more of a classic documentary, but it took me a minute to be like, is this whole movie going to be like this? There's some new music with it, and again, I said, using the medium of Lego animation gave them the opportunity to do some very creative things, and they definitely take advantage of that in the beginning, but you might be going into this going, what is happening here? Is this going to be as whimsical, ethereal, nonsensical as it initially seems? I want to tell you now, no, it does become a more logical, grounded documentary, but it retains those fun, creative elements. So I learned a ton about Pharrell during this. He is more than just the hat guy. As someone who resents the song Happy just because it gets stuck in my head, which I think it happens to a lot of us, and it's not my favorite in the way it was marketed. Anyway, I really appreciated knowing the impact and depth he had on it. Also, to hear him, I had the opportunity to hear him speak very briefly after, just to speak about music. I'm like, oh, you are so smart. Your ability to understand the almost scientific reasoning behind how music makes us feel is really impressive. And so I really admired that about him. He is a savant. You get to see that play out. You get to see the impact he had and has on a bunch of music genres. You get to hear from a bunch of really impactful artists. It is shocking how many people he just happened to cross paths with early in life, which I didn't know about. It's super cool. Again, I think it was really smart to do it through the medium of Lego. Part of me is I really hope they don't do more of this because I feel like his story fit it really well, but I don't know if I want to see every musician's life told through this way because it meshed well for him and it felt organic. But if we're going to try and shoehorn it with other folks, I don't know about that. But as somebody who is listens to music but cannot properly necessarily articulate things about it, this was a really helpful and educational and entertaining experience. There's one thing in particular I really love, and this is not a spoiler, but they have to figure out how to visualize beats and the differences between beats and stings and other things. And using Lego to do that, to distinguish visually, I think really helped me as someone who, again, has no musical inclinations, talents, literacy. I was like, but I do understand visuals. And so this helps me understand it. I had a very pleasant time watching it. I think there are things that could have been cut from it. It is obviously very generous towards Pharrell himself. I think one of the challenges when you do have the actual artists and they are alive and participants in your documentaries is it can't be the most objective thing ever. He does go into some of the, and it's not terrible stuff, but some of his lower moments, but it is generally a very positive view of him. And that's not to say that, that's not who he is, but I think I had the same issue. And this isn't a documentary, but the Rocket Man biopic, Elton John was so involved in it that you could tell it had been a little bit sanitized. And also that Lego agreed to do this and all that stuff. You're like, okay, this has been run through many layers of approvals and clean filters. So it's not, and that's not to say Pharrell's life, is anything less than, but it is definitely a cheery version of it. And the visuals match that. I still think it's worth seeing. And if you are a hardcore music fan, I think you're really going to love this. I am going to give this a 3.9 out of 5. The next film I have is called Bad Genius, and actually, not gonna lie, I did not realize that this is a remake of a 2017 Thai film of the same name. They are both about a character named Lin, who is basically engineers a very brilliant SAT cheating scandal. In this version, she's played by Kalina Liang, who I think does an amazing job in this. You know, she's this Asian girl at a predominantly white private school. She's from a single-parent household. Benedict Wong plays her father, and I really like the dynamic between them. You know, I think if you are anybody who comes from an immigrant household, you will relate to their dynamic. She wants to play piano, but she's also brilliant at math, and he goes, math is safe, do math things. Again, related so hard to this, but her, you know, predominantly Caucasian peers end up wanting to cheat off of her and end up eventually trying to convince her to help them cheat on the SATs. These are like the modern SATs, so not easy to cheat on. And so it's about her and some of her peers figuring out how to do so. It also stars Jabari Banks, Taylor Hickson, Sarah Jane Redmond, Adam Buchesney, and Tina Grant. And again, I think I related to a lot of this film, you know, the pressures if you are from an immigrant, especially an Asian immigrant household, to do well academically, the wanting to pursue a creative passion, but being told like, hey, do something safe, etc. The socioeconomic differences in the families. You know, I do think some of it a little on the nose. Jabari Banks plays her equally smart and also minority classmate who is black. And, you know, there's a lot about their being marginalized both socioeconomically and as, you know, minorities in the school. Again, like I said, sometimes I would say heavy-handed. But if you have experienced anything like any of those characters have experienced, even in a less extreme version, you will relate. I think the cheating part of it and the cheating scandal part is actually really clever. You know, I don't know how accurate it would be and like if you could actually pull it off, but I was like, yeah, okay. You know, this is kind of fun to watch. I am not proud of this, and this will probably date me, but it reminds me of like The Perfect Score or Cheats, which were both movies about cheating. Those were more kind of slapsticky comedy, but you know, this is kind of more thriller with some funnier, snarkier moments peppered in. I still enjoyed it. You know, it's not the most amazing, brilliant film I've ever seen. Also, now that I know it is a remake, because I was like, oh, it's fun to see an original film. I'm like, oh, dang. All right. Okay, fine. Also, I should note, it is apparently based on a real SAT cheating scandal, which I, you know, totally glossed over because thank God, never have to think about that. But I give them all credit for telling it in a relatively compelling way. I cannot speak to how this compares to the original because obviously I didn't even know the original existed. But you know, I think it's still worth a watch. I enjoyed it. It's quick. It moves along. There's plenty of relatable things in it. I'm going to give it a 3.7 out of 5.